it does get hot in here because I turned off the AC, just give me a dirty look and I'll turn on the AC. Thank you, guys.
Cool. Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate it. Awesome. Cool. So today we're going to talk about user acquisition and growth and what it means for you in your startup or in your company. And we're going to cover maybe an hour and 15 minutes of material that's supposed to give you an overview and give you some sort of a framework to work with when you start doing marketing for your company. So I hope that's keeping everyone on the same page. Anyone want to share what brought you here or what you're working on currently? Please, yeah.
I'm working on a startup, so
nice.
It's relevant to be in this space.
Tell us a little bit more.
Yeah. It's called Haptile, HAPTILE.org, Haptile. And at this stage of our development, you can think of us as an alternative to a super PAC.
Okay, interesting. Wow, cool. Nice. So what's your role in the startup?
I'm the full-time founder.
Nice.
Passing through New York City, so going to events.
Very cool. Very cool. Anyone else would like to share? Please. Yeah.
Yeah. So my name is Caesar, and I head up our marketing team at a startup called Andela.
Okay.
Yeah. And what we do is we identify the brightest minds in Africa and train to become world-class software developers.
Wow.
And
Cool.
we place them with companies that need developers.
Nice.
So yeah, we've primarily relied on like organic growth, this entire time. So it's now time that we start buying traffic.
Awesome. Great. So
Yeah.
sounds like we're on the same page there. Great.
Yeah.
Do you want to share? Last one?
Yeah, hi, I'm Conwall. So we kind of do something similar to Andela.
Okay.
We also brought Christina from Andela on our panel.
Okay.
So say hi to her from us. I work for Liquid Talent.
Oh, cool.
Nice.
Cool. Alex and Christina are friends.
Yeah.
Yeah. She came to our Future of Work summit in the Bronx.
Christine's our COO.
Cool. Awesome. Great.
I knew I recognized you from Rise.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I'll just quickly say I work for Liquid Talent. I'm the head of community.
Nice.
/ marketing / beauty, have to wear many roles. What we do is we connect high-end technical talent, developers and designers with job opportunities.
Awesome. Great. Awesome. Yeah, it sounds like a cool room. So we'll leave a lot of time to explore one-on-one after or as a group. And I can tell you a little bit about myself and what I've been up to in the past few years. So I've been generally helping a lot of early-stage startups at seed stage, post-funding to build their marketing infrastructure from the ground up to understand, anywhere from what resonates with what target market to what infrastructure should use from a technology standpoint to hiring the team and then growing the budget, adding a zero every few months sometimes. So in the past few years, I had the opportunity to manage maybe tens of millions of dollars at this point and work with really awesome teams from mostly here locally in New York. And I'd love to. A lot of things that I've learned and reflected upon were through teaching for the past couple of years with places like General Assembly and a few other places, just trying to essentially unpack what it means to be a good marketer. And some of these learnings are going to be presented today, and I hope that these frameworks would help you think through in what I think is a solid way to think about marketing. And then as we are solidifying the framework, we can start getting a bit more technical. Now, granted, an hour is not enough to get too technical, but hopefully this would leave some inspiration, some thinking around it. Sounds good? Anything else someone would like to add before we get started? All right, let's do that. We call the class Growth Games as a kind of naming a bit of a framework or a methodology for approaching user acquisition, or particularly paid user acquisition. The framework may apply to other areas of business or other areas of marketing, but since I'm skewed in my personal experience to paid user acquisition and to early stage startups, a lot of it would be skewed towards this direction. Cool. So the goal of this approach is to minimize chances of failure and maximize the odds of success. Obviously, we're going to introduce some frameworks. We're going to talk together about some frameworks that would allow teams to gather around a common goal and to work towards that in the most efficient way. It's designed for early stage startups, as we said, and it's based on decision making optimization. And I guess this is the main kind of premise of the framework, it's really based on maximizing your ability to make decisions at any given point in time. So they, as just a sentence, defining trait of successful acquisition marketer is a systematic and/or intuitive ability to make decisions that are most likely to result in success. And this is what we're here for. And this is sort of coming from an understanding that every step of the way has to do with decision making, right? So you can choose to launch a platform, but then once you launch a platform, say you launch Facebook ads, you're going to need to choose if you're running on desktop or mobile. Once you choose that, you're going to need to decide if you're using, what targeting you're going to use. And there's infinite amount of choices there, almost infinite amount of choices there. Then you're going to need to decide on creative and the length of the test and the device and the landing page and the retargeting campaign that this is associated with, the pricing. All of it has to do with decision making, and it forks pretty quickly. So we're sort of trying to align and find this path that is the best path for or the best framework to navigate through this chaos. So the concept I just talked about is this is you as the acquisition marketer, and you're getting a very, very large stream of input in your way, and the input can come from where? Where do you normally get things in your direction? Feeds. Okay, sure. Maybe yeah, sure. Social feeds, conversations of your users, maybe feedback from your users. What else do you get as a marketer? What can you consume? Maybe analytics, all types.
I was going to say data and behavior data from Google Analytics.
Sure, so data from Google Analytics, absolutely. And Google Analytics it has a lot of different reports that you can access and a lot of different slicing and dicing you can do within the data. You get data from Twitter Analytics if you'd like to, from other analytics tools that you have, from platforms in which you're running advertising. There's data accessible of your industry, sometimes competitors' data that is available. There's a big chunk of input that is coming in your way, both from user feedback, industry feedback, and your marketing activities and website activities. And as you're gaining this knowledge, here are some places where data can come from. This is just a map of marketing technology, almost all of which is producing data for you to consume, or capturing data for you to consume. So if we're there's a lot of, we can come back to that in a bit. But you're getting this input, and now you're asking some questions to this input. You're asking, what report should I look at? What analytics tool should I install? Because there's a lot of options there, as you saw. I want to get, there's common mistakes that I'm noticing people are saying, I want to capture all the data first and then look at it, but just focusing on capturing the data. Or people may ask, what should I look for? I'm not sure. There's too much coming in my way. So your first kind of proposition is to navigate through this input, or to really understand what you would want to look at, and be very, very diligent in not getting lost, because the most common thing is to get lost. When we're teaching Google Analytics classes, people are just lost because they don't know what they're looking for. So this is number one. And then what happens? You have unlimited amount of possibilities of what to do with the data. So you're capturing this information, then you're asking questions of where should you run campaigns? How should you run these campaigns? When? Who should you target? How many drip emails? What A/B tests should you run? How many segmentations of retargeting should you do? There's a lot of different questions you can ask, and as you're producing stuff, as your input becomes, you produce something, an initiative or a campaign, and you release it to the world, you're actually creating more input for you to analyze. So the cycle is pretty vicious, and again, most common mistake is for people to get lost in this process. So a good marketer carefully decides what data to examine and consistently evaluate the most effective initiative to launch or optimize. And that's what we're going to talk about, how to manage this scenario. So in order to here we go. So the first thing that we'd like to do is to define where we're driving towards, right? If we don't know where we're going, that's going to be very hard to navigate the decision-making process. So Paul Graham said, if you can just avoid dying, you get rich. So the first thing, I mean, from a mathematical standpoint, as an early stage startup, you're very, very likely to fail. You're more likely to fail than not. So your first goal is to not die, and the second goal is to succeed, or they come together normally. So, so you want to navigate yourself towards success, which means, in our case, define what success means, which is the first step that you would want to take. So start with the end in mind on how do we define success. When you think of an early stage startup, and please give us some input on this framework because it may have some inaccuracies. But when we're thinking of how startups may not die, a seed stage startup, for example, cannot stay in seed stage. It's impossible. It's impossible to stay where you're at. Business is moving over time. So you either raise more funding, or become profitable and self-sustainable, or sell the company, or IPO, which is not very likely if you're early stage. Maybe a combination. So every day you lose resources, momentum. You lose the runway. Runway means like how much can you survive without raising any more funding, and in a way, if you're staying stagnant and you're not growing, you're actually placing yourself in a failing state, because the world is moving, your runway is diminishing. You need to grow faster than that. So this is fast growth is the key for increasing your chances to succeed. I guess that's some of our assumptions here. So how do we start thinking about growth? When you think of a company as a overall body, there's different functions of the company, all of which are aligning towards a successful objective. So if you think of a North Star for a company, you have different functions at the company. The product, the marketing, culture and hiring, very important. Operations, again, depending on your business, you may or may not be applied. You may have your own pie of your pillars moving in a certain direction. Now, it's important that the goals of all of them are creating the North Star of a company, of a successful company that survives and thrives. And if today we're thinking of marketing, we're thinking of, if this is kind of like the view from above of this pyramid, this is how it would look on your marketing side. And we can call that the company board, where all of this kind of pyramids are colliding to a North Star, and think of marketing as its own path to a marketing North Star. So the first step as a marketer is to define what is this North Star. So what this may be for your company. And anyone want to share what, if you have one, what this may be?
Talent acquisition.
Talent acquisition, okay. And it's pretty measurable for you. Do you have monthly goals for it, or
yes.
You measure the growth rate, or how do you look at it?
Well, we have like a couple of channels that we're using right now, and so we have goals for them.
Got it.
Because we need to tell our investors
Sure.
if we've met that or if we've exceeded it.
Absolutely.
Or just goals for our sales team as well, just so they know how to reach it, or we can measure their performance.
Absolutely. Great. Awesome. So it sounds like you're all aligned on one objective. Anyone else would like to share? No? It could be revenue, it could be new users, it could be a combination of activation, retention, acquisition. It can come in different shapes. It doesn't matter. I mean, the North Star matters. It doesn't need to be too accurate, as long as it's directionally where you want to be. Now, notice that you need to achieve this North Star in the context of time, resources, and runway. It's the most important thing, because this is where people are losing. They're asking, what is the best solution, rather than comparing it to your resources or to other available options. Step 2, you would want to evaluate the best moves to get to your North Star. So if this is you and you want to get here, you want to think of the most efficient ways in terms of what you're going to do in order to get to the North Star. I know it sounds obvious, but it's very easy to get into this weird rabbit hole of exploring options. Like, I can give you an example. You're running a marketing campaign. You have a clear hypothesis over where you want to be and how you want to play your cards, how you want to move in your marketing environment. And then someone calls you and say, hey, would you want to advertise on the subway? And you would say, maybe, let me evaluate it. And then you're calling the subway, the MTA agency, and you're asking them how much is an ad, and they give you some pricing, and then they're sending it to another agent that sells some remnant inventory, and you explore that. Then you call some other companies that have ran subway ads before, and you do that. You start exploring some ideas. You email your founders. You start having this long conversation, and before you know it, you spend a week on a reactive mode of evaluating options that were coming to you instead of being proactive and eliminating and being diligent with your time and resources, because this is very precious when you're a startup, to be very, very directionally correct. This is very easy to get lost. Number one mistakes that I've seen in the field is just people are getting bombarded with people that want their time and want their attention. And if you're going this exploration mode and testing mode without too much directional understanding of where you want to get to, you're going to get lost. And the best way to think about it is you're looking for the path of least resistance. It's not about the best path. It's not about the most thought out, evaluated path. Out of a million options, I evaluated each one and got to the point where I want to be. It's more about finding this critical path where you have the least resistance to move forward and to have momentum. Again, I know it sounds obvious, but it's very, very, very common, almost on a daily basis, to get this, should we run podcast advertising? Should we do that? Should we do that? And then small tests, and you're losing direction very quickly, running sideways instead of minimizing and kind of like doubling down on what's working. So you want to be very strategic on how you make decisions to move. Now, once you make a move, once you say, yeah, I think podcast advertising is right for me, and I think that's the right path for me, you're looking to minimize the amount of time it takes you to test this channel and to move forward within this channel. So each move has its own kind of board, if you like. Cool. Does that make sense? Any questions? Was this too obvious or too? Yeah, please. Yeah.
How do you evaluate which methods? How do you take into what are things you take into consideration when you evaluate the opportunities that are given to you?
Cool. We're gonna get to that. That'd be fun.
Okay.
Yeah, that's great. Any other things you'd like to touch on now and coming up? It's a good question. Yeah, great question. Cool. So optimizing your marketing game. We're gonna get to evaluating these options. You first want to have some contextual understanding of what's going on around you, and this is key for being able to make smart moves. And in order to evaluate them, you need to understand that as well. So there are 4 areas that I like to focus on. One of them is understanding the users, or how users in your target are behaving. The second one is understanding the marketplace dynamics. What are your competitors doing? What are the advertising platforms are doing? What is everyone's incentives? And how can you plug into this world? The third part is technology, leveraging technology and using technology in a way that gets you forward. And the fourth part is to understand what internal unfair advantage you have and how can you use that as part of your marketing strategy. So if we're thinking of the first part, the target market, you want to ask, this is pretty basic, and again, we can dive deep at the end if you'd like to. You want to ask questions like, who are your users or target? Who is resonating with your message in terms of demographics, psychographic, what do they do, read, how they interact with the world, what terminologies do they use, what is currently existing kind of files in their brain that you can plug into, how do they potentially perceive your product? These are all like, who are they? Where do they spend their time is an important one, because you're in a marketing context, and your goal is to intercept their natural behavior and intercept where they're at the moment with your message, and kind of hopefully enhance their life with what you're offering. So you want to ask yourself, where do they spend their time, particularly online, because we're doing mostly online advertising. Is it social media? Do they search a lot? Do they go on forums, blogs, online communities? Do they read newsletters? All these things you would want to ask yourself, where do they normally spend their time at? The third part you would want to ask is, what message would resonate with them in terms of your value proposition? What features would they want? What pricing is right for them? What creative resonates with them? And it could be per segment or for entire user base. And that's stuff that we normally test. You can call it product market fit if you'd like. We normally test that pretty early on to understand what can we scale in terms of messaging and in terms of the product offering. And market research these are some tools that you can use. Market research, you can talk to your customers, is very important. Customer development is a framework introduced by the Lean Startup methodology, and it's a way to ask questions that prompt interesting answers from your users. You can run surveys. You can use any type of data. You can tools, for example, like Qualaroo are great. Qualaroo is just a tool. For example, it's just a tool that asks people on your website some questions and let them interact with what you want to understand about them based on certain rules. To test that, we can run paid media experiments to test a lot of these things, the targeting, where they're at, and the value proposition. We can experiment in a variety of other places online. And again, we can come back to that, so I'm just going to do an overview, and we can come back to this point if you'd like to. The second part is understanding the dynamics. This is where it may get a bit more complicated. We can do it together. There are 3 concepts here. There are other concepts that I'd love to talk about, but since we're short on time, that's a nice kind of concise approach. First thing is the concept of inventory. As an advertiser, it's really important to understand how this works. So you can take an analogy of someone walking down the street, for example, and there's only 3 available billboards for them to see. And one landlord owns these 3 billboards. We want to ask the question of, first of all, you want to understand what are your competitors trying to do, and what is the landlord, right, the person that owns these billboards, what are they trying to do? The first idea that we need to understand is inventory is finite. It's a resource that people compete for, and it's not. You cannot increase this. You don't have the control to increase this type of inventory, of advertising inventory. The second part, you want to ask yourself, if you were the landlord, what is your goal? Let's play this game for a second. If you own this 3 billboards, what is your goal? There's a street like 23rd Street, say. There's 3 places to advertise, and one landlord owns the 3 of them.
Want to make as much money as possible for each billboard?
Sure. Yeah, make as much money as possible.
Have them all rented out all the time?
Yeah, sure. All rented out, sure. What else?
Probably whatever content the advertiser wants to put on the boards themselves needs to be in line with the landlord's thinking, perhaps?
Sure. Yeah, I would call it UX, if you don't mind.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So from a UX standpoint, the landlord wants people to come back to the street and watch the advertising. You want them also to pay attention to the advertising. It's fundamental, because otherwise there's no value of the advertising. If there's no people and the people are not paying attention to the advertising, there's no value for advertising. So in order to appreciate your inventory as a landlord, you want to care about user experience. And this is key for understanding online advertising, because this is how Facebook works, for example. Facebook, let's say Facebook has this 3 slots. They're saying, wait, we care about retention of our users, right? We care about users coming back to the website. If we show them shitty advertising, they're not going to come back. So Facebook would penalize advertisers that are putting shitty content, and would give benefits for advertisers that are putting good content to the users, and something that enhances their experience. One second. So when we're thinking of online advertising, I've seen the spectrum of maybe 10x in terms of the price of inventory for the best advertisers, just from my sample size. The best advertisers and the worst advertisers, 10x in the price per click, for example. Please, yeah.
I was going to ask, in this case, what would be the sort of piece that, because like on Facebook, you can kind of understand or measure, quantify whether or not people were looking at the ads.
Right.
In this case, what would be the component that you use, or just
In this case, right?
yeah, or is it just because of the arbitrary thing?
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's gonna get the analogy would get completely limited at some point.
That's fine. I was just seeing.
But yeah, that's a good point. Maybe they give high five to the ad, or they look at it for more than a couple of seconds.
No worries. No,
Yeah, but it's a great question. Yeah, for Facebook,
Conversions off of the billboard.
So conversion, sure.
How many people called that specific number?
Sure.
That billboard or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. So as an advertiser, there's a concept called, where the platforms, in order to solve this issue of UX, they created something called quality score or relevancy score. Each platform has its own kind of terminology. Essentially what it means is that if people are interacting and engaging with the ad in a meaningful way, as far as the platform can understand, they're going to decrease the amount of money that you would pay per bid. So the more your ad is relevant to the users you're targeting, the more they're interacting with it, the less, significantly, a lot less you're going to pay for the ad. So this is a major advantage you can have as an advertiser, or a disadvantage. If your ad is boring, doesn't resonate, you're going to just pay a lot per click or per view. In terms of dollars, what the landlord created is, for example, Facebook, or actually AdWords was the platform that invented it, is a real-time bidding between these advertisers on inventory. So sometimes it's real-time, sometimes it's not real-time, depending on the platform. But essentially, they're asking the three advertisers to say, how much are you willing to pay maximum per slot? And then each platform has its own bidding mechanism or structure where this kind of actual auction is taking place. And this is how they maximize their dollar amount. So you can imagine that on Black Friday, there's more advertisers competing for somewhat limited amount of inventory, and therefore the prices are going up. But if you're advertising on places where there's not that many advertisers, for example, maybe mobile, a lot of advertisers right now haven't made the switch to mobile yet. Therefore, mobile inventory is a lot cheaper. Does that make sense? So right now, cost per click on mobile maybe 3 or 5x lower in a pure test that we've run. So you have an advantage because there's not that much competition there. So competition is a key for understanding. Understanding the incentives of your the landlord as an incentive of your competitors is key for growing for having the right paid marketing strategy. Make sense? Any questions in this one? This is pretty universal. Most platforms are just looking mostly on CTR, click-through rate, as a indicator for quality or relevancy score. It's more complex in most platforms, but CTR is the first kind of indicator of whether or not users are engaged with the ad that you're putting out there. Click-through rate meaning out of 100 people, how many people have clicked? What is the percentage of people that have clicked on the ad out of 100 people that have seen it? Cool, so you ready for some more marketplace dynamics? This is a bit, I don't know if we can call it marketplace dynamics or not, but this is a bit of a marketing math of understanding your funnel and how it works. So this is another kind of contextual understanding you can have. And we can share this slide later if you'd like. So if we're running an advertising campaign, we're starting by looking at we're setting up a campaign in terms of platform. We're choosing the platform, we're choosing the ad in terms of creative, the ad type, what device it would be running on, who would it target, what is the copy there, etc., etc. Then we're putting it out to the world, and people are seeing impressions of it. Based on this impression, some people are clicking, some people are not. This is click-through rate. So the click-through rate means how intriguing is the creative for the target audience, normally speaking. And this is the clicks divided by the impressions. And then you can look at the cost per click, which is the, it's determined, as we said, by this kind of like quality score and relevancy score and your bidding strategy, how much you're willing to bid. There's different bidding options. But essentially, it's how many people clicked on your ad, and then you take your overall spend and divide it by the amount of people that have clicked, and this is your cost per click. So it's determined by a lot of supply and demand and ad inventory, and your own ability to be a good bidder and a good creative, post good creative into the platform. And then conversion rate is, again, normally speaking, is the, it's an indicator of the quality of the people that have clicked on your ad. So if someone clicked on your ad and out of 100 people, 10 of them have converted, your conversion rate is 10%, which may mean good quality users that you targeted and may infer off your targeting and creative match for this campaign. Does that make sense? Great. Some of the spectrum, it's definitely not complete, and it's just very, very narrowed down kind of a view of what type of paid marketing you can do. The most major buckets are search, display, social, video, and native. There may be other types of advertising that we're not counting here, but I think these has the most inventory. So if you think of search, Google AdWords is definitely the biggest. If you're thinking of display, there's a lot of players in the field. All of them are consuming each other's inventory. It's actually a complex ecosystem. Some good options are, depending on your minimum spend, DoubleClick, Rocket Fuel. Google AdWords has their own Google Display Network that you can run at nice minimums. Depending on your budget, you would find different types of solutions to display. Social advertising, Facebook and now Instagram is definitely very strong platforms that have a lot of capabilities. Twitter is a little bit dying in terms of inventory, but still there's interesting things to do there, particularly if you're on mobile or you have an app. LinkedIn is interesting, particularly for job seekers. Pinterest, from my experience, if your brand is visual and you have something beautiful to show, Pinterest may be an attractive platform. Video is coming up. Currently, the pricing, from what I'm seeing, it's pretty cost effective to show people your video on YouTube, for example, or on Facebook. You would find, since it's a fairly new advertising channel, you would find the price to be pretty attractive. And as advertisers learn and jump into this medium, I think that the prices would get more and more expensive. So this is on the video side, and then on the native advertising side, native is a we board of content recommendation platforms there. So Outbrain has the most inventory, followed by Taboola that has quite a bit of inventory. Yeah, please.
Just a quick question. Is revenue tied to Facebook video now?
What do you mean?
Same way someone can put a video and make money off their video on YouTube. Is Facebook? I know you said the inventory is cheaper now, but
Sure.
I don't know if they even had revenue.
Sure. So you mean paid videos, right? Like video advertising, or
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like if someone had a cat video and they made $1 million off on YouTube.
I see. This is a little bit different. So I think more organic. There's like organic versus paid, and organic would be this is what you described, meaning someone has a lot of followers, and then they're maybe taking some organic followers, and then they may be taking brands to sponsor them, or some advertising to advertise on this platform. I wouldn't call it video ads. Maybe it could have been better defined. That's a good comment though. This may be more affiliate or this kind of structure, where you reach out to the influencers and you say, hey, would you mind if I'll plug in my product to your cat videos?
Okay.
This is definitely more so on YouTube than on Facebook. Now, both YouTube and Facebook have an option for advertisers to put their own video and pay per view. So you can pay per person that sees your video. But that's good clarification. For now, we can talk about that. That's a good distinction. Any other questions on this landscape? You can try to imagine where each one plugs into your target market, and we can talk about it if that's interesting. But I think a lot of us, since we're using these tools and we are interacting with them on a daily basis, I think we have quite a good indication and intuition to what may resonate with your target market. So if you are a 65-year-old, that's your, people 65 and plus are your target market, you may not advertise on Snapchat, right? This is like the obvious kind of conclusion, but then you can work backwards to where do they normally spend their time at, what's the natural behavior, what do they look for in these platforms, and then you would want to plug in as close as possible to what they were seeking to achieve in this platform to begin with. So if they're searching for something, you would want to show them a relevant search result. If they're scrolling down their Facebook feed, you may want to show them an article or some sort of piece of content or something interesting for them to interact with, because that they were looking to find interesting things online through their Facebook feed. This is complex. Any questions here? Again, we're going to recap the overview in a second and get into more specific questions. All right, good. The third part is technology. Again, a long discussion. That's where we're getting more and more complex into, from the more obvious to the more complex. You want to leverage, okay, so it is again like a landscape of marketing technology of 2015. There's a lot of shit you can play with. There's just a bunch of stuff you can do, and it's overwhelming, and you want to be able to define just a few things that you actually need in order to run your marketing. I'm a big believer on a clean stack, like a very minimalistic stack. If you have too many analytics tools or too many advertising platforms, you have a big overhead on monitoring them. It consumes your brain space, it consumes your time, and you're not able to get really good at one thing. So for me, maybe one analytics platform is enough for you, and you want to stop exploring, and maybe in a few months or in 6 months you can say, hey, is there anything else that I really needed to use and I didn't have available with my platform? Maybe that's time to find another solution. But try to keep it to minimum. I think that's key. When we're thinking of analytics, the platforms are giving us analytics when you advertise. So Facebook has a lot of reports you can look at as soon as you start advertising. And then on your website, you have web analytics, like Google Analytics, that would give you a clear image of what happened to your campaigns after people clicked through to your site. Does that make sense, these two sites? Cool. The last part, and I think this is key, and maybe coming back to your question there, is to develop a strong internal process for running marketing. This is maybe one of the biggest reasons that I think companies are failing with their marketing efforts is they're just not internally aligned and systematic in their approach to marketing. I'm sure if you've worked in a marketing field before, there's just a lot of ideas. Everyone is emailing ideas to each other, and it's pretty chaotic in many different ways, and it doesn't allow you to be very focused, if not everyone understanding what you would want to do as a growth marketer, as acquisition marketer. So you want to be, it's some recommendations here. First of all, looking at your internal team in order to create advantage for your marketing. So you can look at what can your team do that no one else can do. Do you have any advantage, there? Is there any campaign you can launch that no one else can launch? Any influencer you can touch that no one else can? Anything you can say that no one else can? This sort of like allows you to have build some wall around your marketing activity. If you do something that's very easy to imitate, you're not likely to succeed because people are going to jump in as soon as you're successful. The second part is, another question is, this is just probing questions. What assets can you produce faster and better than others? Maybe you are really good at animation. Maybe there's an intern in your team that can produce amazing work for video, and therefore your cost per launching a video campaign is a lot lower than normal. You may want to pay attention to this channel, or it's one point of consideration for how to go about things. What have you produced or learned in the past that may be of a heads up to a new initiative? That's an important one. Do you have any learnings from past activities that would inform the next campaign over? Some recommendations on some marketing process internally. Create a framework for deciding how to spend your marketing resources. Key, it's very hard to align the team otherwise, unless you're a founder. It's very hard to align the team without having a clear metric to evaluate. We can talk about how it looks like. In a second, we can talk about that. I think most marketers, a lot of marketers are using a 2-week sprint methodology where you have like 2-week goals and objectives to reach, and you're just having this as like in 2-week increments of sprints. I think consolidating everyone's ideas and thoughts into concise weekly meetings or bi-weekly meetings is probably better than having them sporadically running around. So everyone can know during the week what they think should be run in terms of marketing, and then you sit down in a room and you discuss the different options and you say yes or no to certain things when everyone is in the same room. It's very important for a startup to do that together. Capture and organize historical learnings and knowledge and make it accessible. Again, another thing that startups are not good at is to capture this historical learnings from past campaigns. It's very hard to operate future it's very hard to be future oriented if you don't know and you don't capture the past. And if you every time someone joins the team or launches a campaign, they need to rethink, reanalyze, rediscuss, or invent the wheel from scratch. Probably not a good idea. So you want to capture all your A/B tests, your experiments, your learnings into one centralized place so people can come back and look at. Learn how to say no to keep your stack manageable. If someone tells you, hey, why are we not running Twitter ads? You say, do you want to run them instead of what? Right? Don't assume that your stack is like infinitely scalable. Just like try to keep it like minimum. And if someone asks to insert something, maybe ask what would you like to remove? Or otherwise, why is that more important to spend the time on Twitter ads than getting better at Facebook ads? Be very diligent there. And hire talent with high ability for critical thinking and decision making. It's key. People with experience may come with a lot of, they know how to run Facebook campaigns, and therefore they're going to gravitate towards that. And everyone's blamed with that a certain amount of experience, but you want to have a fresh look of the entire stack all the time, and therefore you need to find people that have very strong critical thinking ability and being able to unpack these decisions into these possibilities into a concise set of decisions that you make. I think this is kind of like the overall framework that we'd like to introduce, and I hope that was helpful. And now we can discuss deeper strategies and deeper ideas into that. Awesome. Yeah, please.
Let's say you launch a marketing campaign. At what point do you realize that you can keep trying versus you should stop and then just sort of get rid of what you're working on and try something new? Because sometimes like you can keep trying and then eventually it'll work versus like how can you know when something is just doomed?
Yeah, sure. Great question. Don't have any working. Okay, how to like.
I guess how to tell when something is like, yeah.
Okay.
So I'm pretty sure that with like a lot of people when they throw out ideas and then other people
Totally.
are like, oh, I don't like it, it's not good. They get all personal and like,
Totally.
like you gotta be like, well, no, this is not working, so we gotta try something else.
100%. Okay, cool. So we asked how to evaluate, how to design campaign tests, and when to stop them. What other things would you like to know, or would you like to discuss?
I mean, I guess how to choose or start. I guess I mean it's kind of how to evaluate because right now I'm at this point where my team we're developing a budget for paid advertising, but we're trying to figure out, okay, where do we start? Do we start off with search and I mean with intent or display,
Right.
or do we test out Facebook and LinkedIn? So I guess.
And I have a more specific question. These ads, like when you click on these blogs, and then you click on, like, they advertise, like, how do you create these ads? You know what I'm saying?
Sure
Like,
thing.
when you click on a blog, they make millions of these ads that are like, so.
Sure. Advertising in like publishers. Yeah. We can talk about that. Anything else? Yeah, please.
I just want to hear your comments on all the Instagram proclaimed services that'll get you millions of followers, thousands of followers. They always feel like spam.
Oh yeah. Sure, for sure. So like followers market kind of thing.
I guess maybe just commenting on like what would you say, and it might be product specific, but like what would be like a minimum amount of spend on Facebook ads for a critical decision to be made, right?
Sure.
You spend $10 and say, hey, okay, we got leads or
Absolutely.
whatever, or $20,
Yeah, absolutely. Makes sense. Cool. Should we do that? Well, let's go one by one. So how to evaluate and choose campaigns or platforms to run. There's no clear answer for everyone. I can sort of pull some of my frameworks, but you want to think of like all the metrics that would consider scale for you, and I normally put them in a spreadsheet. each one gets a point system, and this way we can evaluate. So things that I'm thinking of in my particular cases are scale, CPA, or projected CPA. Some important things for me are learnings, like cross-platform learnings. Setup time, or I guess test resources, you can call it, is important. Like how much would it cost for me to in terms of internal resources and money to test the channel. Other things that you can think of are brand alignment. Internal advantage. Risks, right? What other things would you think?
How much audience? How much of the audience?
Yes, yeah. Sure, good point. Oh, maintenance time is a big one. So if you're running a campaign for a specific, Khan's Academy movie kind of festival, whatever that may be, it's like a one-off thing, and you invest your resources in one-off. In a way, you're not creating evergreen. So I don't know, maintenance is one, and another one you can say, like, is it evergreen or not? I personally tend to invest a lot more time on evergreen campaigns than one-off campaigns. For a particular reason, you get a lot more opportunity to optimize when it's ongoing campaign, and once it's a winner, once you are happy with the results, you just let it run and you move your brain focus into a completely different campaign. So therefore, I like to create this. I like to spend my time creating things that are sticking around for a long time. I think that's a better investment for my time, better ROI for my time in this way. And you consolidate a lot of that, right? So if you're running a one-off campaign for the elections here in New York, what are you going to learn from it? I don't know if we have learnings here. Learnings, yeah. So you're not going to learn much because it's going to be one-off. It's not going to be really scalable because the scale is limited by just one election. It's not evergreen, so you're not investing in the long term. But if you're working on a retargeting flow, a story sequencing flow that is applicable to every user that comes to your website, it's totally worth investing a lot more time in it. So I personally like that. It's some people would say other things, would say otherwise, but I like to invest in things that are scaling well. Now, granted, I'm working with funded startups. Pre-funding may be worth to gain traction in a more scrappy way and less scalable way. So if you're aligning some of these, it's per company, right? It really depends on your case. But if you start to align them and score them, each one like low, medium, or high, then you can start comparing channels on a score basis. So for example, measurability is a big one, right? Measurability. And I'm happy to share like a spreadsheet with you later if you'd like. So we're looking at scale. So if it's, say, let's compare, for example, Facebook ads versus podcast advertising. Okay, so that's common like startup question. Everyone wants to be on podcast right now. So Facebook advertising versus podcast. Scale definitely higher on Facebook. What is that? Sorry? Oh, podcast advertising. Yeah, just essentially kind of like when podcast is like these radio shows, and you can plug in the middle some of your advertising. Startups like that right now. So, but when you think of scale, your Facebook ads would have a lot greater scale. When you think of projected CPA, maybe equal if you don't have any other indicators for it. when you look at cross-platform learnings, I mean, maybe for podcasts you can move to national radio, maybe to other podcasts, but there's not that much. For Facebook, you can learn from Facebook and move it to display ads or other social networks. Measurability, podcast is not very measurable. Facebook is very, very measurable. Test resources for podcasts, the minimum's a little bit higher, and it takes longer to create the creative normally. Again, depending on your team. If your team is audio team, maybe the opposite. But if you, for Facebook, you just need an image and copy. For podcasts, you actually need the audio stuff. Brand alignment, maybe podcast tier would be greater alignment because you want to be associated with the podcast you're advertising on. So maybe here that's the point for podcasts. And then internal advantage, do you have any advantage on either platform? Risks, is there any risks associated with them, financial or not? Maintenance time, how long does it take to maintain? You can start comparing. And is it evergreen or not? You can start comparing. And there, after the end, I think what I'm trying to say is try the team to agree on a metric for evaluating marketing activities rather than agreeing on marketing activities before there's a metric. Because it gets wild, you know? Like, people have personal preferences, and like I hear stuff like radio advertising is cheap right now. Maybe we should run on this platform. There's a new competitor for our brand. And you're like, okay, rule number one, we keep the stack small. Rule number two, we're being very consistent about how we evaluate different options. And we do it team-wide, and like we get the buy-in on the framework rather than on the platform. It's very hard to... I don't see that many teams working with this process, but I highly recommend to introduce that to your team from day one, because it's just easier to be aligned and takes less friction. Now, once you test it, you can measure the CPA and kind of decide if you want to sustain it or not. Now, how to tell when to stop? It depends. Do you want to give maybe a story? Because it's the spectrum of possibilities here is too wide.
It's a very too general question.
I have an example though. I think in general, I'd just like to know, like, how do I guess unite a group and make sure everyone's like on that point where, like you're, I guess how to make sure that everyone's on the same page in terms of like, okay, we want to run this marketing campaign for the company and not for like, oh, my idea is better than others, or
I feel like that's almost covered in the first one, right?
Yeah.
Because you put out a whole chart,
Sure.
and then every time someone comes up, well, what about this other idea? Well,
Sure.
go back to the board. Why did we make this decision in the first place?
Yeah, absolutely.
I would just strongly define KPIs.
Yeah, that's important. The North Star where you want to reach, and then like trying to align your way there. Another way to look at it, if you already ran a campaign, this is a good way to examine. So you can say, my impressions, you may fall in each stage. You may say, well, the network didn't have any impressions for my target market. So you ran a campaign on Twitter. It didn't serve that many ads. Or click-through rate was too low. So therefore, CPC was too high, but conversion rate was okay. You sort of want to look at your funnel and identify where things are falling after you launch campaigns, after you have some data. Another one is, we didn't touch that, but it's a question of whether or not your company should use paid media. And it's a tough one because a lot of companies it's not a part of their marketing stack to pay for advertising. A quick activity is when you think of these metrics, right? You get to CPA. Sorry, this should be a CPA here. You're getting to a CPA. Now, if your CPA, are you familiar with the term LTV?
Yeah.
Lifetime value. Wow. We're totally off. So you have LTV. Let's start here. CPA means
If there's a brown one up there, that's going to be darker.
okay. Let's see. Yeah, it's gone.
In the market first, still.
So CPA is the amount of money it would cost you to get another customer. If we're thinking of paid media, if you're spending $100, how many customers would you get? Now, this needs to match with your ability to spend money do you have cash in the bank right now to acquire users? Sort of when I'm thinking of cash flow, how much can you sustain there? And then how long would it take you to make the money back? So if you're spending $1 today and within 24 hours you're getting $2 back, and you didn't spend any other cost on like this, there's like a clean case of just the software, there's no additional cost whatsoever, then totally spend as much as you can, and I'm sure investors would jump on the opportunity to give you more money to spend. It's possible that your tool is not capable of sustaining CPAs. If your CPA is $100 and you're making per user $50 in your lifetime, it doesn't make sense for you. And you may want to look into other types of marketing, like viral marketing or organic blog posts or other types of marketing that are not involving paid advertising. Does that make sense? Cool. So we touched this. I mean, you're running campaigns and you want to ask when to stop. This is a great question. Experiment design is not easy. You want to have an hypothesis in mind and projected. You want to know before you run a campaign what you're looking for and what you would define as success or not. And then you can say, I'm going to spend less time or more time. Now, on this campaign. Granted that the more you spend time on a platform, the better you become at this platform. So there is this like improvement of your team, of your design team, your creative team, your developers, your bidding strategy. All these things are going to get better over time if you're investing time in a platform. But you're going to see some indication of, from here, you're going to see some indication of whether or not it was successful. Did you see a lot of impressions? Was the click-through rate was great? Maybe the conversion rate wasn't great. So you would say, okay, let's invest time improving conversion rate. And that complements the platform. And that means maybe A/B testing on your website, changing the pricing, going through like a different flow for the users. Cool. One more question was about publisher advertising. So I think you were talking about like the boxes that you see at the bottom of the screen. Is that what you're talking about, or?
Yeah. I mean, everything that they make money, except for the Google AdSense, they have other ways of making money.
Sure. So there's, when you think of a publisher, and there's different structures there. The two prime ones are display advertising.
Huffington Post, like they have all these ads.
Yeah, sure. Most of them are display and native. So display is Google AdSense. The displays are essentially banners that are living in your blog. So let's say that's your content, and we can buy this inventory from Google AdWords or from other providers. Now there's something called recommended content platform, which is this kind of boxes with a title, and it says from around the web or something like that. And this is people hate them. I've definitely spent a lot of money on this platform. So blame me if you like.
All these weird stories.
Yeah, I'm not promoting the weird stories, but that's a different story. So this is called promoted content platforms. The biggest players are, as we said before, Outbrain and Taboola. Outbrain, it's in the deck, so Outbrain. They have the most inventory, and Taboola is not too far after.
What do they call them? Platforms and campaigns?
They all like, some people call them native, some people call them recommended content platforms, content recommendation engines, different names, same thing.
Okay, so you pick the content from Outbrain and you put it there? Or?
Yeah, you can create an advertiser account at Amplify Outbrain or at Taboola, and you essentially can choose your image and your link and your title and bid. So you can bid for, there's not much targeting available there, but you can bid on certain areas. There's certain bidding strategies
so
there.
Does it make more money than the Google AdSense, or?
It depends on your case. It depends on it depends on many different factors. You can test and compare. This definitely wouldn't take too much to test Outbrain. Wouldn't take too much to test AdWords display. or Google Display Network. Cool. Did that answer the question?
Yeah.
Great. Followers market. People that are.
Who's doing all those? Like, give 1,000 followers. I hate it.
So they try to sell you followers, or do they try to plug your brand
Because
into
if
it?
I was a venture philanthropist or capitalist, I would set up some of those companies or people just to test the integrity of an entrepreneur. Oh, we have X amount of followers, but you really just purchase them or whatever.
Good point. Yeah, great point.
But specifically Instagram, because that's just an attractive one.
I mean, it doesn't get you far. I don't know. Companies are doing it, right? So Twitter, a lot of it, most of the traffic on Twitter is like fake. Well, a lot of it is fake, or used to be until they started blocking it.
Fake as in like bots trying to.
Like I don't know. There's like Jay-Z's followers, or you should look. If you look it up. It was like a couple years ago that blew up, like trying to look for Barack Obama's followers, and a lot of them were bought. You know.
It's mainly for social proof. So
Yeah.
People see a lot of followers, and then other people are like, "Oh, people like that."
Yeah. Ethical or not? I mean, yeah, it's a tough one. You can also pay to get people to like your page. So that's
YouTube views.
yeah, YouTube views. Yeah, I cannot say I haven't done stuff like that before. Please.
Yeah, regarding this question, I've been doing a lot of research about Instagram the past year, and there is a company called Demographic Pros. I don't work for them, but they pretty much give you like a legit analytic about followers, and everyone is like whether celebrity or I was forced to learn because I'm starting a new business in the same industry that I still work, and Instagram is like number one in this industry.
Got it.
But it is very interesting the way that it works, because there are people that have like 100,000 followers, and there are people who have like 10,000 followers, but 100,000 their account is just garbage because they pay for followers,
right.
But people don't know that digital marketers or whomever, they actually are able